On a tense evening, December 31st, 2024, at a popular bar in the Fulton County area, a sudden altercation broke out between two women, turning the once festive atmosphere into something stifling. The heated words, threats, and the police's intervention escalated the situation to a point of no return. But what really happened that night? Was it just a misunderstanding, or was there something more sinister behind this incident? Let's dive into the details through the story below. The girl, with an utterly innocent and blameless expression, like a character just stepped out of a classic movie, calmly began to explain that she was simply enjoying a peaceful evening, immersing herself in the music at the bar. She just wanted to relax, unwind, and enjoy the music like everyone else. But like a sudden storm, before she could understand what was happening, another woman, with a furious gaze and a tone as if she were playing the lead role in a soap opera, dramatically accused her, "You're flirting with my boyfriend." Amid the crowd, the girl was probably wondering to herself, "Oh my God, am I listening to relaxing music or starring in a tragic romance movie?" She didn't care about anyone's boyfriend because, in reality, she just wanted to blend in with the evening's vibe, not intrude into anyone's relationship. And right at this moment, the story takes an interesting and thrilling turn.
Why?
Because in an unforgettable moment, the girl realized that simply sitting still and enjoying a relaxing evening could make others feel as though she was secretly coveting something. Beauty, natural charm, sometimes, can be an invisible weapon that makes others feel threatened without even realizing it. It's surprising how, when you do nothing but sit, you can still provoke such strong reactions. The world is strange because sometimes, just a look, a harmless gesture can turn you into an enemy in someone else's eyes. From this perspective, it becomes clear that life in situations like this is never short of surprises. Sometimes, even just breathing can make you the center of suspicion. Just when it seemed like everything had calmed down, the stage was set for the police officer, a figure with an undeniable serious demeanor, who carried a request straight from the pages of a law book: "Please show me your driver's license." The words rang out formally, making the atmosphere around them suddenly heavier and tenser. The girl, still confused and lost in the situation, must have thought, "A driver's license? I'm just sitting here. I'm not driving. What's going on here?" Her world seemed to flip upside down. In that moment, the officer's request was like a bizarre challenge, like asking her to present a pass to enter a completely new world where everything required a certificate and clear justification. She wondered if she had accidentally stepped into a soap opera, or maybe a criminal case, while she was simply trying to enjoy her evening like everyone else. With a look of surprise mixed with some bewilderment, the girl decided not to get swept up in the misunderstanding without having a chance to explain herself. Though she didn't understand why she was caught up in this situation, she chose to face it, courageously speaking up, as if her words could change the officer's entire worldview. "I haven't done anything wrong, I just want to enjoy my evening." Her words rang out bravely, but with an interesting paradox. She wasn't a criminal, she wasn't causing a disturbance, she was just a girl enjoying her private moment amid the noisy bar. But the insecurity in her explanation made the situation more tangled, as if she were trying to justify herself in an action-packed film, where the detective and the suspect always have to face off in every line of dialogue. But as she spoke, the officer attentively took notes, as if he were investigating a serious case. He wasn't just listening to her explanations. He was so serious and professional that everything around him turned into a complicated investigation. Between these two extremes, the story was no longer just a confrontation between the girl and the other woman. Now, it had become a battle involving the legal system. A system in which, at this moment, no one truly understood what was going on. Was this a simple misunderstanding, or was a dramatic new twist unfolding? No one could answer right away, but one thing was certain. This confrontation was making everything more interesting than ever, like a multi-layered play where we couldn't predict the ending. And like a scene in a comedy movie, this situation kept getting more unbelievable. The officer, with an undeniably serious face, continued demanding the girl's ID, as if this were the most important task of his life. It wasn't a dangerous criminal pursuit, it wasn't a hostage rescue, but rather a demand for a driver's license, something that, in the girl's eyes, was far less important than simply enjoying a peaceful evening with music. But instead of calmly responding to the request, the girl slowly shifted into a tense state, as if her confusion had transformed into uncontrollable anger. The light-hearted dialogue turned into a fiery argument, with a rhythm more fitting for a boxing match than a simple exchange of information. When the officer coldly asked, "Do you have your ID?" the question rang out like the starting signal for a battle. But instead of answering calmly, The girl immediately retorted, "I haven't done anything wrong, I'm not a criminal." With this response, she was like a warrior fighting for her innocence, and in the eyes of those around her, the situation seemed to be escalating into a tense showdown between two characters, neither of whom would back down. The people stood there, unsure whether they were witnessing a legal meeting or a comedic duel between the law enforcer and a woman determined to protect her pride. This story was getting more and more interesting because neither side was willing to yield, and every word exchanged seemed to escalate to a climax that no one knew when it would stop. The officer, with his serious expression and authoritative demands, remained resolute in requiring the girl to provide her ID, despite the increasingly fierce resistance from her side. Meanwhile, the girl was losing her composure, and the conversation had turned into an endless tense debate, with her arguments like an unstoppable flame. This was no longer just an exchange between two people, it was a battle of wits between the law enforcer and a confident woman, each standing firm in their own stance. Truly, in terms of entertainment, this was a peak showdown that we couldn't take our eyes off of. A battle of intellect, patience, and resilience from both sides, all happening in a noisy bar where anything could happen, and no one knew what would come next. In that noisy environment, this conversation had turned into a contest, not between the power of the law and the lawbreaker, but between one side's firmness and the other's stubbornness, all coming together to create an unforgettable scene. At this point, the police officer decided to play the role of a mediator, as if he had just attended a 3-step conflict resolution class and was applying his newly learned skills. He turned to the girl's fiancé with a patient expression and said, "We've got this under control, no need to worry." "Ah, so the situation is under control. That's wonderful. However, there's just one thing." While the officer confidently declared his expertise as a crisis manager, the girl was still simmering like a ticking time bomb, ready to explode at any moment. Standing between both sides like a patient referee, the officer did not forget to cautiously send a message to the girl, "You need to calm down." And surely, this was a very valuable piece of advice. For someone who wasn't being dragged into a heated argument, someone who wasn't the primary target. The girl, feeling everything slipping out of control, must have been thinking, "Calm down? Who needs to calm down, if not you?" Because, in reality, while everyone around remained calm as if nothing unusual was happening, the battle between the bride, on the brink of losing control, and the officer, trying to resolve everything peacefully, was unfolding like a ridiculous play, where no one was really listening to anyone's advice. The officer might have been proud of his patience, but the girl, with her fiery retorts, as if starring in an unscripted action movie, certainly had no intention of following such a simple piece of advice. If viewed from an outsider's perspective, this confrontation truly resembled a comedy without an ending. The fiancé stood helplessly by, unsure of what to do, while the officer, deaf to the situation, remained calm, hoping everything would eventually return to peace. But while all the characters were playing important roles in this drama, clearly, the officer's advice was not helpful at all. When someone is in a highly stressed state, telling them to calm down is like telling someone out of breath to just breathe. It's just empty words because, in this situation, no one could truly control their emotions, especially when the reasons behind the situation had yet to be thoroughly resolved. After an emotional dialogue, the officer decided it was time to end this little play with an official announcement. "You will receive a warning for trespassing and must leave immediately." Ah, what a wonderful gift, a free ticket to leave the premises. But of course, the girl had no intention of going home so easily. She reacted as if she had just been told she won a free trip to an undesired location, but had to leave immediately with no time to pack. Not everyone can ignore such a warning, but the girl, clearly, was not someone who would accept defeat without fighting till the end. Instead of meekly accepting the warning, she started to perform as if she were participating in a marathon, taking each step slowly, seemingly stretching every moment to prove she wasn't going to be shoved out so easily. With every step, she not only wanted to leave, but also made sure she would leave no trace, as if she were a character sneaking away in an action film, deliberately avoiding attention. Perhaps she thought that by walking slowly, the officer would forget his original request and stop caring, as if they would be convinced that her slow pace was a voluntary decision, not one forced upon her. But no, this was merely a fun escape act that everyone knew couldn't last long because, in the end, everything was under control in a way only the officer could achieve. No matter how slowly she walked, the story wouldn't end until she left, not in the way she wanted, but in the way the officer had decided. While she thought she could stretch the time a little more, everything still followed an unchangeable script. And of course, when she realized her performance wasn't having an effect, she might wonder, well, could I have left sooner without doing all this? But once you've become the lead in this play, how could you simply give up? The conversation between two friends arguing over who would pay for the meal suddenly turned into a tense battle, where every word from the girl sounded like a decisive declaration. She kept insisting on not cooperating, not just with her friend but also with the officer, despite the escalating tension. Even though the officer patiently asked her for identification, she stood firm. "No, I haven't done anything wrong, why should I give it to you?" Her answer wasn't a reasonable explanation, but a declaration of battle, as if she were competing in a who's more resilient contest. And in her eyes, this was a battle she was determined to win. In reality, the conversation between the girl and the officer seemed endless. Every request from the officer was rejected by the girl, and she refused to give an inch. While the officer started to feel like he was replaying the "I love you, you love me" scene from a soap opera, the girl behaved as if she were the star of an action movie, where every request from someone else was a threat that needed to be resisted. Every word she spoke was like a declaration of war against the law, as if she were participating in an intense mental battle, aiming to defend her privacy to the end, with no compromise. And so, instead of just handing over her ID and settling the matter in a minute, she decided to turn it into a mental battle, where she played the role of a resilient warrior, resisting every legal request from the officer. Every time the officer asked for her documents, she came up with a new excuse, as if it were part of a long-term plan to protect her honor. She believed that if she kept clinging to her reasons, the officer would eventually give up, and she would be the winner in this conversation. But the confrontation seemed to become more and more bizarre. The officer persisted in his requests, while the girl continued to resist, arguing as if the issue could be resolved with words rather than action. Both seemed unable to find a way out. The officer, though losing patience, remained firm in his mission, while the girl believed she could turn the situation around with just a bit of cleverness and determination. But, like in a movie, when everything seemed to have gone too far, one realizes that such dialogues rarely end in a pretty way. In the end, she might realize that sometimes, to avoid trouble, it's simply better to comply with the request instead of turning it into an endless battle that benefits no one. After a period of patiently handling the tense situation, the police officer decided it was time to take things to the next level by implementing a stronger measure, arresting the girl. However, instead of calmly cooperating like in the action movies she might have watched, the girl wasted no time and immediately turned this encounter into a dramatic chase. She took off at the speed of an Olympic sprinter heading for the gold medal, leaving behind astonished onlookers and a police officer struggling to keep up with her. The girl, believing that running away could solve everything, didn't realize she was in a pursuit where the outcome would surely not be what she expected. Like in an action movie, she thought she was in a life-or-death race, but real life isn't like the movies. She ran as though she could overcome any obstacle, but the truth was, while she might temporarily evade the police, no one can run forever. As expected, she only made it a short distance before being caught, as if everything was part of a plan to bring about an unavoidable conclusion. The situation became even more comical when she realized that running away wasn't the solution. Her attempt to flee only made things worse, as if she didn't understand that she was pushing herself into an even more tense situation. This chase not only failed to get her out of the predicament, but also led her to face more severe consequences. When she was caught again, her urgency vanished in the instant she realized that being a fugitive wasn't a smart choice. Now, not only did she have a warning for illegal trespassing, but she had also accidentally escalated her situation into a farcical and unexpected adventure. In the end, her flight didn't just make things more complicated, but it also showed her a truth. Sometimes, running away just digs you deeper into trouble. The girl would likely have to learn an important lesson about facing situations instead of trying to avoid them because, in life, sometimes facing the problem is the only way to solve it. After a prolonged escape and endless arguments, the girl finally realized that she couldn't keep avoiding responsibility forever. With a face full of regret, or at least a softer version of a loser, she admitted her mistake. Surely, at that moment, she couldn't help but feel like a character in a dramatic film where every careless action comes at a price. Perhaps now, she had realized that running away wasn't the best strategy for life, especially when facing a patient officer like that. Although at first, she might have thought she could easily brush everything off, now she saw that each step of running away only took her farther from a real solution. The police officer, with his calm demeanor reaching professional emotional regulation levels, slowly explained the serious consequences of her actions. "Well, what you're doing now isn't just a small problem anymore." These words were not just a dry reminder but a confirmation of the price for hasty decisions. In the girl's mind, everything seemed to slow down, like a scene in a TV show where she had to listen to a lecture on how to handle things correctly and how not to drive others crazy. Indeed, this was the moment when she had to face the undeniable truth. Every action has consequences, and sometimes they come faster than you think. Perhaps, at that moment, she began to realize a simple but profound truth. In life, sometimes facing the problem rather than running away is the optimal solution. She might have spent the whole evening arguing and running, but in the end, she had to face reality. Running away wasn't just a way to solve the problem, it also made it worse. At least she had learned a big lesson, though a bit late. The truth is always the queen in any situation, and sometimes, facing reality head-on will help us find a better path. As a conclusion, she might feel like the lead character in a dramatic comedy, but the lesson she learned from this confrontation would certainly never be forgotten. Ultimately, in life, admitting and facing mistakes might be the first step to resolving conflicts, while running away, no matter how dramatic, just prolongs the trouble. When everything seemed to be coming to a close, the police officer decided to wrap it up with an enticing offer. "You can sign a warning for illegal trespassing, and if you want, you can go to court to contest it." At this point, everything seemed to play out like a grand finale in a comedy film. The police officer, with a serious face but a hint of humor in his words, made an invitation that was just as unusual. An opportunity for the girl to not only receive a warning but also experience a legal sightseeing trip to court for free. How wonderful! It was like going to the supermarket and receiving a coupon for your next purchase, but this time you couldn't use it for food, only to improve your legal life. And clearly, this was an offer no one would want to accept, but it was part of an unavoidable process. The police officer calmly explained everything, like a salesperson in a supermarket, never rushing, but confident and persuasive. He made everything clear, as if he were presenting an attractive product. "If you want, you can go to court to contest it." Everything was delivered gently, with the calm demeanor of someone who was very familiar with this situation. This explanation was like a perfect sales pitch, ensuring that the customer, in this case, the girl, understood the policy, while also reminding her of the consequences of non-compliance. After all the arguing and tension, the girl must have realized that continuing to debate would not be helpful. It was time to face reality. With a gentle yet cautious attitude, the girl offered an apology, but surely this was an apology no one would consider sincere. It felt more like a calculated admission of guilt than a genuine expression of regret. Perhaps she just wanted to quickly wrap up the drama, but it was undeniable that her apology could not salvage the situation. And right then, like a clown in this legal drama, the police officer seriously confirmed a legal statement. "It's all been recorded on the body camera." This calm statement carried an immense amount of power. All the girl's apologies suddenly became a reminder from the police. "Oh, if you forgot, everything has been recorded, and I haven't forgotten." Indeed, like a final warning, he made her realize that whether she apologized or not, everything had been recorded, from her arguments to her attempts to escape. Everything concluded like a perfect play, where all scenes and lines were clearly recorded. What happened that evening would forever be stamped in the police collection, and "everything has been recorded on camera" would be the perfect slogan for the poster of a legal comedy film. The girl could leave, but this encounter would always be etched in the memory of both parties. An unforgettable confrontation, with every detail recorded, creating a memorable ending. In the end, this story was not only a tense drama between a stubborn girl and a patient police officer, but also a valuable lesson about staying calm and cooperating in tense situations. Instead of resisting and creating more trouble, the girl could have resolved everything quickly and smoothly if she had listened and followed the authorities' instructions. The takeaway from this is, sometimes, silence and listening is the smartest strategy, and running away is never a wise choice. Life isn't always a battle to protect one's ego. Sometimes, cooperation and respecting the rules are the keys to avoiding unnecessary trouble.